Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the 19th edition of Arts Power Hong Kong Online Talk. I am Josh Yu, Director of the Art Museum at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and the moderator of today's talk, Chinese Antique, the Roots of Hong Kong's Trade and Collections. Today, we are joined by Dr. Libby Chan, Assistant Director of the Hong Kong Maritime Museum, Andy Hay, Founder and Director of Fine Arts Asia and Ink Asia Hong Kong, and Maria Kiang, Founder of Maria Kiang Chinese Art, to discuss the past, present, and future of the Hong Kong antique trade. Welcome, everyone. As most of you know, Hong Kong is home to one of the largest art markets in the world, but the history of the antiques trade here is relatively short. So we might start by asking, how did the Hong Kong art market get to where it is today? Knowing that Andy was brought up in a family that specialized in antiques, would Andy perhaps give us a brief background of the development of antiques trade in Hong Kong over the past few decades, please?
Thank you, Josh. Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Andy Hayes here. I think people familiar with me that I'm the second generation of a very long-term antique business in Hong Kong, which established by my father, basically in 1969. But actually, before he had this firm, actually he came to Hong Kong in 1949, and by that time he already practiced in antique dealing already. I'm going to share you an image about a little story about this history. Okay, all right, yes. So as the description underneath, this is an antique shop. Typical from the last century of Hong Kong in Kowloon side. Actually, it's not what we always talk about antique street, which is Hollywood Road. Actually, one major part of the history of the antique dealing actually is established on Kowloon side, Tsim Sha Tsui area, mainly because of the antique dealers, or what we call the traders, or the owners of what we call the curio store. When they moved to Hong Kong after 1949, normally they would take boat, so everything, they will all settle down in the Tsim Sha Tsui area, especially around like what you have seen here, Hankow Road, Canton Road. So this is where I've been brought up with my family. As Maria said yesterday, I was surrounded by Wang furniture since then. So, and after that, my father formed his own firm, surprisingly, not on Hollywood Road again, but I don't know if you guys or the guests familiar with the Chongqing Mansion. Wow. So this image show is the mezzanine floor of Chongqing Mansion in 1969, where he first opened up his, we call gallery today. So I spent quite a lot of time with that area. And then maybe later day, people were familiar with there's a special arcade for antique shop in Hong Kong Hotel, where one of the major luxury department store located in the Ocean Terminal. They call Harbour City by now. So this is where, as my understanding, we're part of the antique trade brought up or established in the last century, especially after 1949. Yeah, thank you.
Well, Andy, that is very interesting. Nowadays, you can actually still see plenty of antique shops on Hankow Road. And but I would never have imagined that your father had a business in the Chongqing Mansion. Because our, or at least my personal understanding of the Chongqing Mansion is quite different from I don't associate it with antiques trade. So was the perception of Chongqing Mansion very different over the, in the 1960s? Well, why did your father decide to have a shop there?
It's just like what we are facing nowadays in Hong Kong is the rent. Okay, because my father actually turned out to be an owner of an antique shop because of working for somebody else for so long, for more than 20 years, for practicing antique dealing, especially, of course, Chinese classical furniture. And I remember he told me a story that George probably will ask later on about the sourcings of the objects at that time. Actually, yeah, he did bought or source the pieces from overseas, like in 1960, with just 1,000 US dollars that he saved it for almost 10 years of time. Now, his first trip is almost like a round the world trip, like from Hong Kong, Singapore, India, London, and United States, Hawaii, then back to Hong Kong. This is how we call, well, we can describe it as one-man business, or the runners, where the elder generation used to do, especially in the North China or Shanghai area. They don't have galleries. Just like nowadays, we can just trade through mobile phone. Yeah. So you don't really need the physical, presentation by the time. You need to show yourself. Just like we're showing up, like a face-to-face communication. Yeah.
So Andy, when your father came to Hong Kong in 1949, he was already a seasoned art dealer, right?
Or
did he learn the trade in Hong Kong?
He learned the trade in Hong Kong. It's because of one of our relatives own an antique firm or curatorial store in Beijing. One side story is many of these dealers or traders from Beijing, Tianjin area, they are all Muslim. When people recognize my last name, Hey Hak, they already recognize we are from a Muslim background family. So I'm going to share another image on, okay. This is the, okay, see, I make a very short description underneath. This is a group of antique traders in 1957, where they took this picture. Actually, my father was the photographer of this picture. This is a group of antique store traders or owners who moved to Hong Kong after 1949. And they have a gathering in one of the Kowloon Tong mansion in 1957. As you can see, I don't know if you can see my arrow. Actually, this is my grandfather.
Yes, we can
from
see
my
that.
mother's side.
Wow.
Yeah, he owned a store on Peking Road after 1953. So by that time, we don't really, concentrate or specialize in just one, field or one territory. They are kind of whatever they can source, and they will sell it. Jade, ceramics, snuff bottle, especially snuff bottle. My father used to deal a lot in snuff bottle in the early days. Old carpets, furniture. So they call objects what we call scholar objects in the present time. And they are all related to the antique trade in Hong Kong in the mid 20th century. Yeah. So,
well, Andy.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yes. No, it could be a very long story, but I just want to share in like a briefing style on this. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much for those very important photographs. Actually, Andy has brought up a very important aspect of the antique trade in Hong Kong during the early days, because we would imagine that the supply chain is the most important aspect for the dealers. And in order for Hong Kong to establish itself as a major art market, we would imagine that many dealers would have sourced their works from elsewhere. And in the case of the early 20th century, many of these prominent art dealers, as you can see from Andy's photograph, have emigrated to Hong Kong and bringing their expertise and also their inventories of art. And so it is very interesting to see that Andy's father's business started out that way. And it is also very interesting to see that his father has gone on to explore other channels, not just in mainland China, but also elsewhere, as he has just mentioned, using that 1,000 US dollars that he had saved over the years to source these various types of works. So this leads us to, talking to move to the present time, because nowadays, over the past, year and a half, many Hong Kongers are not able to go anywhere. So we would imagine that may have a major impact on the business. Perhaps we can ask Maria to tell us how the pandemic may have changed the way that you source your works of art.
First of all, maybe about plus or minus between 15 to 20 years ago, the importance of having a shop, is like, for example, on Hollywood Road, is not quite as prominent as it was back in his father's day, where people just walk in. People travel now. People deal a lot with auction houses. And if you go along Hollywood Road before the pandemic, up and down, you see mostly Korean tourists with big buses and everything like that. And a lot of shops, they have a lot of their things, their gems, their treasures hidden away behind, not in the store, in the shop fronts, so you don't burn the pieces, for example, and expose it to people who may not appreciate it. And then, of course, as I said, people come around from all over the world in order to buy and sell antiques in Hong Kong. It's not just a cultural hub. This is really the hub for antiques. You've got people from mainland China, Taiwan, Japan, Europe, and America. They all flock here as a central point for a lot of trade. And because of the pandemic, because of COVID, we don't have that luxury anymore. However, Andy said the other day, like, a lot of shops on Hollywood Road have closed down, but the inventory is still there. Everybody still has their stock. Nowadays, the actual physical shop isn't quite as necessary as before, and people still deal privately. I'm talking about myself as an example. In order to source, what people do now is they have WeChat. They send photos, and if we're interested, they might ship the piece over from wherever it was sent. And if we like it, we pay for it, and then we just wire the money. Or same thing goes for my clients abroad. If I have a piece that a client of mine, let's say in Taiwan, likes, I send the photo, he says yes, and then I ship the piece over. If he likes it, he keeps it, he wires me the money. If he doesn't, then it's then he ships the piece back. So the biggest benefit are the logistics company, really. But things still happen. We still have to do business. And transactions are a little bit slower, but we're all still very active.
Andy, would you say that your business operates in a similar manner?
Yes, it's always been like that. I don't know. When I used to travel a lot overseas in sourcing mainly furniture, which is very unusual now and very competitive with many other people who have cell phone mobile phone, that because you are competing maybe 1,000 people at the same time when people send you the pictures. So it's a very different atmosphere. But I remember when I used to travel to London maybe 2 or 3 times a year, I once experienced that the shutdown of the street level galleries on Chinese art, including antique and paintings, etc., etc. Many of these still has moved to upstairs. They still exist, or even turn out to be like a one-man band. People, we are mobile ourselves. Because the reason why they give up is same because the bloom of the like a Bond Street, the luxury band, the luxury goods, luxury branding company, I call invade in this area. So they have to give up their, gallery area. But time after time, they slowly, some of them has moved back on the street level. So it's just like come and go. Yeah. But the progress could be very long, just like what we are facing now in Hollywood or in Hong Kong. When antique shop covered at the entire street from Wyndham Street down to the, Lock Road. But now it's been shrunk into, very limited area, but we are still here. And this is also the reason. This is what I believed in. And when I first moved to Hollywood, I was upstairs too. But after, maybe we will discuss this later, after the bloom of the mainland Chinese market, I have to move down to street level to let them come to see me, approach me easier. Yeah. Of course, it's not like there wasn't, iPhone yet. They still need to come to see you. They call, or later they SMS you, or even fax you. It's a story of good old times anyway. Yeah.
Well, already I can see that there is a little difference between the narrative that you're telling and what Maria is telling us. That brings us to the topic of the Hollywood Road, because for decades, Hollywood Road has been the main site where Hong Kong collectors and dealers conducted business. And Andy has a shop on Hollywood Road, and he has also organized major antique fairs in the city, which provided a new platform for collectors and dealers to do business. And Maria is a regular participant of those fairs. And I think, Maria, your own gallery.
Since 2008.
Yes. And Maria, you also have your own gallery in Pacific Place, right?
No, it's not in Pacific Place. It's up in mid-levels. I set up a gallery in a flat because I deal in Chinese scholars objects. So scholars objects is a bit more, slow pace, a lot more private, and then also, it's right here actually. And it's, you need a more intimate setting. And traditionally, people gather together in a small space so that they have the quiet, that they have the luxury to just appreciate things and the atmosphere and the lifestyle. And I quite early on, I've embraced how people nowadays, they don't have like a 四合院, the old traditional houses where they can fill the entire house with antiques. This is a flat. People in Hong Kong is just full of high rises. It's not completely realistic to fill up an entire house full of antiques. It's, people need couches, people need soft beds, people need the modern conveniences that because of that, I needed to kind of merge the old with the new so that people can see how antiques can actually live in a modern contemporary setting.
So from the way that you operate your business in a private apartment, and from the way that Andy has also branched out to starting new art fairs, would you say that there is a shift away from Hollywood Road? I mean, I think Marie has kind of alluded to that earlier. And if there is this, you know, shift from Hollywood Road, why is that the case?
Well,
Andy, Maria?
thanks to Andy, there's things like art fairs that people go to, and a lot of people they come and they I must say some people are quite lazy. Okay, they want to go and to they want to fly over, visit one space, and then do all their transacting like in that space. They don't want, no offense to anybody, but a lot of people, if they go to the convention center for an auction, they don't really find the time, since it's so busy, to go to Kowloon to visit another dealer, and then another place for another dealer. And unlike, I'm sorry to offend like many people here, but unlike in contemporary art, where you can source things, maybe from single artists, if we deal in a very high end for antiques, it takes time to collect. And if we were to just sell things little by little by little, sure, that's one method, but at a fair, people show their best. People show what they curate for, and to show what this person as a dealer can represent. And this is now given as a new avenue to dealing. And not everybody is limited to being in a shop. I work as I'm independent. I don't have anybody working for me throughout the year. So this setup is useful for me because when I'm at the end of the day, let's say Andy travels, and then somebody goes into his shop, but at the end of the day, the person's not going to finalize a transaction with whoever's working there. They need to talk to Andy.
Okay.
And same thing goes for me. And for me, it just kind of cuts out all the middlemen. And if I travel, I travel. If I come back, I have clients making appointments in order to see me. So for me, it just works out that way.
Okay, maybe Andy, you can also share your perspective. You already have a shop on Hollywood Road.
Yes.
It is already a very concentrated area. So why not? I mean, if the purpose of your organizing of an art fair in the convention center is to bring in people to gather in one place, then why not simply do a kind of weekend party, like what people do in a Portobello Road, where you can just encourage people to go there, as opposed to going to your art fair? Why?
It's not simple, very simple to describe this. I'm kind of complicated personality because I have two spirits in my head, from two great masters. One is my father, one is Bob Ellsworth. They are extremely different in personality. The way they are dealing in antique business, the way how they live, their living style. I'm going to show you one image of when I was still slim, which is okay. Okay, yeah, this one is I'm on the right. This is
you need to
four of
screen.
us. Okay, so
we can't see the photo.
Yeah, just a moment. Yeah. Okay. All right. Share. All right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So me, my father, Ellsworth, and his assistant by that time, Cater. Um, After this year, I'm normally travel to New York City a lot, especially to participate the well, when you talk about why I established the Fine Art Asia in Hong Kong, this is the beginning of it. The way New York dealers, they deal with elegance. Even the antique fair or any art fair in New York City, what we call the Armory Show, Winter Fair, Armory Show, the later one when they first established in 1989, the International Fine Art and Antique Dealer Show. I witnessed which I agree with Maria a lot, where which she mentioned it earlier, the collectors, what they collect. When I worked for Bob, of course, he presented all his furniture, Ming Dynasty wall painting, terracottas, which is not so popular now. But at the opposite of the booth is a firm of, well, they are gone already. It's called Chinese porcelain. I saw they hang, the Liu Dan famous painting of dictionary on the wall. And it sold to a very famous collector in New York City at that time. It inspired me on not how new and old can come across together in the same, site, just maybe like the background of Maria's office or apartment right now. So it inspired you a lot because, well, when I was young, a little kid, I don't really like antique. It's very hard to use, let's say, hard to live with. Yeah. But as you can see, that's why I left my father's firm and opened up my own on Hollywood Road. I just want to, apply my experiences during, the New York trip or London trip in cross collecting. Just like you can see here, I also am a toy collectors. I put the vintage toy together with my antique, a Qing Dynasty J Boulder in my in my back. So I want to emphasize, no matter in 20th century or until now, is a path of full of joy. Not only me, also the collectors or buyers that we experienced before, the American buyers, the Park Avenue buyers, which bought lots of furniture from us. And of course, later on the mainland Chinese buyer, they are lack of patience. So they won't show up on Hollywood Road frequently like the local collectors. So we are facing, very, different frontier, different territory in the antique world of Hong Kong, not only Hollywood Road. So flexibility. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you, Andy, for that reflection.
Yeah.
Well, here I would also like to add that from my own experience as a museum professional, curators have benefited greatly from these art fairs. And the Art Museum of CUHK has spot a number of important pieces from dealers through these fairs in the past. And here I will take the liberty to share some of these images with you. So these are some of the recent acquisitions that we have made over the past few years. And our curators at the University Museum have been in contact with gallery owners worldwide, and sometimes we're able to get some really good deals. And one benefit of working with dealers is that we know the price in advance, and we are given the time to research the piece properly, and then we can raise the necessary funds for it. So we are pretty certain that our relationship with dealers will continue to thrive, and hopefully one day we'll be able to do some business with Maria and Andy.
Yeah.
And so
it is true. For doing art fairs, another aspect of it versus let's say going into a shop sometimes is that when you show the tradition in Hong Kong for a lot of dealers is that they have their pieces on the outside, but their treasures are locked up inside the little Chinese covered boxes. And then only if after you have a certain relationship with these people, or you know somebody else who has a relationship with these people, do they start revealing other things to you. But if you don't have the confidence in making that decision right then and there, sometimes some people might be afraid of like collecting a fake or something like that. Whereas when you have everything on display in a fair, everything's public. It's you can talk to somebody else who passed by. What do you think of this piece? And then it becomes a dialogue. And it's something that's public. It's something that's the perception is a little bit like how people would operate in an auction house, because it's public enough for people to discuss certain pieces because they're out in public, not hidden away. And I think that's quite important for a lot of people collecting.
And these art fairs are also the venues where curators would mingle with collectors and also dealers. And the collectors who buy from dealers would also lend or donate artworks to the museums later on. And CUHK has benefited greatly from local collectors. And perhaps we'll ask Libby whether she would tell us about the collecting practice of the Hong Kong Maritime Museum.
Yeah, sure. So like for the collecting at Hong Kong Maritime Museum, we are like quite active to look at what the markets would have. And before talking what our like acquisition recently is, and I'd like to link it to some like little background about the trade materials and the history about what those early days in Hong Kong, like maybe the 19th or 20th century, that lots of the let's say the sailors or the traders, foreign traders, then they come here. The traders they came to Hong Kong. Usually, what they would purchase things back home. That would be they were shopped along the Queen's Road. Sometimes they would have a portrait of Victoria Harbour, or the export fan for the wife back home, and or like ivory or export silver and some ceramics. So that kind of practice indeed that was started in Canton, which is Guangzhou today, and where those horns they merged, like what Andy said, that many like migration indeed from mainland China to Hong Kong, that in different waves. One of the waves that would be when Hong Kong opened as a free port, that would have lots of traders, then they come back to Hong Kong. They select Hong Kong. So in our museum, one of the strengths of our collections, which would be a trade art export materials that could considered as Chinese antiquities category as well. So for this group of materials, we indeed actively work closer with either dealers or auction houses, either Hong Kong or London or New York or other places, because lots of export materials, they were used to, they were sold and brought back to the foreign traders' hometown. And that's why today the source will be that locations as well. And also also work closely with dealers and collectors, and also with the museums as well. So we would, and of course, some of the materials also purchased from the art fairs, like what Andy's organized every October. That indeed that would be a good place for us to collect as well. And we also work closely with other museums, such as we had a show on export silver, and that collaboration with the museum from Guangdong, and we noted that their collections, indeed, they came to Hong Kong to purchase their collection for the museums. So and also at Hong Kong Maritime Museum, and we every year we would have a place to rent out for the one gallery in London, which is specialized in trade art, mainly paintings, and that is the location that usually in that exhibition, museums from Macau or like other museums locally, and they would or in Guangdong area, they will all come together. So we share information, and we also even would have a strategy. Okay, we purchase this, and then your museum purchase the other, and then we can work together to have an exhibition, something like that. So that would be the practice we have been working for long. And also I love the collaborations in Hong Kong among museums and dealers and auction houses, that we all always share strengths and then also the collections, so we can work closely together in collecting.
That's great. Thank you, Libby. I think all of us would agree that one of the major benefits of working in Hong Kong is that it is such a desirable place to be, that many of our friends from elsewhere would join us in this city to do exhibitions and do fairs and do shows together. But the past year has been really difficult for us, and so my question to Maria and to Andy is, do you know if any business, any dealers have retired, or any business folded due to the difficult times?
Well, I think in our field, there's no such thing as retirement. You have Robert Chang, who's like 95 years old and still going on strong. You have people don't retire because they love the pieces, and they have, as long as they have stock or an interest, it's you're also a collector. You collect what you don't sell. But at the same time, if you have the opportunity, we would sell. So because of that, people are still dealers, and there's no such thing as retirement and folding or anything like that. Although you are not in a physical space, perhaps, but you would still people still buy and sell through their channels or through auctions.
And Andy, do you know of any dealers who have diversified their inventories to attract more clients?
Well, I can simply say what we call the Hollywood gangs. I don't know any of them have been switched their attention or their interest in diversify their their territory. Just like myself, I insisted in furniture because I have this passion, or more than just love, with the pieces. And this is the best way to present your pieces, your collection, and to introduce to the buyers and collectors, especially the younger buyers. You have to, it's really, just like Maria said, a physical gallery probably is not the most important, terms to be an antique dealers in nowadays, because the technology, much less time of travel, immediate image sending, change the entire atmosphere, environment a lot. So and I also agree with Maria. I always say I want to retire by age of 40. Okay, now it's almost 13 years after 40. So it will never come true, and it's a fantasy. But just like my father, he's 88, but he's still, like a hunting treasure, still under a stage of hunting treasure, but he's only hunting inside his, apartment, inside his gallery, where he's hid something long time ago, where he forgot already. And oh, whoa, I found something, missed it for a long time. So it's, again, it's full of joy. So as this is one of the reasons why as I try to run an affair in Hong Kong, I want people to come together to share not only their information, knowledge, experience, but also I love to see the happy faces. Just, I want to extend what I call the good old days. So the Hollywood Road will never die, never fold, but it's come and go. And even we are, just like my father, he came to Hong Kong in 1949, which he just gone through the Sino-Japanese War. It was an extreme difficult time for him, but I think every generation will face a time like that, just like what we are facing now, an extreme difficult time. But he said, oh, don't worry, times will come. There will be always opportunity. Opportunities could be sales, could be buy, but I think one very important difference, the elder generation of antique traders or dealers in Hong Kong, usually they are really difficult to work together. I'm not talking about partnership, but work together. But in a platform like Affair, actually, even we are divided into different booths, but actually we are all work together to get in the same platform in a certain times, which is the trends, not more than trend. This is the direction of the younger generation. I'm the second, there will be third generation, probably not my son, could be somebody else. But also, as I know, there will be some dealers coming back to Hollywood Road. Yeah, according to our information, some of them will return to Hollywood Road because of the pandemic, the rent has been dropped even up to 50% already. So it's a good time to get back into this market, to get back into the trade world of antique trade in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you for the positive outlook, Andy. Earlier, you mentioned the younger clients, and I think Marie also has mentioned that. It seems that both Sotheby's and Christie's have reported significant increase of new clients under the age of 40 in 2020, and there's a strong appetite for online sale. Has the influx of new buyers in the market benefited you?
Okay, maybe I can start answering that so Andy can get his breath. For these statistics from Sotheby's and Christie's, I think when they say influx of younger collectors, what I feel is though an easier entry point for collectors in general is if they love art. Most of them, they start off with contemporary because it's visual. You don't have to worry about what's real or fake, what the condition is, what color it is in order to determine like a price just looking at a photo or something like that, especially during the COVID times. So the younger, I think the younger audience is, let's say during COVID, they were used to doing transactions in person, in front of other people, and that's part of the thrill. But now they're stuck in front of the computer bidding online, or they're restricted. So there are some people that I know who have diversified by, you know, instead of just looking at a contemporary day sale, they'll look at other things. Everybody's stuck at home at COVID, so maybe I'll buy something from design, or maybe I'll buy something. They'll start searching in different categories, and then I do have come across people who started getting interested in antiques, and I've been contacted and have been cultivating avenues from there. So there have been new buyers. But we have to get through as antique dealers. We have to kind of get through the hurdle of how there's 7,000 years of history to go through before you fully understand and appreciate the lot of it. But it really comes down to visually, it's something that they like, and it's not. I see the question that Jonathan Crockett just asked. Do you see less young collectors coming into the market than previously? Before the demographics were a bit older. I mean, it wasn't until in recent years where I see younger collectors being interested in our field. Before that, I mean, as a lot of my friends they all think that every antiques is they have the stigma of being relatable only to their grandparents or something in the older generation, that it's something that they can't touch. What I see a trend in more recent years is that they do diversify. They certain people like myself, I been trying to incorporate not just Chinese antiques, but other aspects of art and design and paintings, because as I said before, not everything in the house is just antiques, and it can't be that way anymore. So, you know, we've got paintings, we've got design, we've got everything that gels together in order to have a certain feeling of a lifestyle in the home, and for them to be able to relate. So it's not like how it was before. Cross collecting, I think, is the future. And in order, we as, you know, people of the 21st generation, 21st century, we're not like how it was 100 years ago, where not many people have access to museums, not have to books, to the internet, you know, and we have to tap into the fact that people have traveled everywhere and have seen a lot more things, and they need a way to kind of gel it all together. And it's kind of our responsibility as dealers to grow with the collectors, and to give them a vision that they have the capability to have pieces, even though they're thousands of years old, hundreds of years old, to be able to live with them seamlessly.
Mm-hmm. Andy, would you like to chime in?
Yes, it's the matter of how to live with that. For example, I have better sales last year, 2020, at the fair myself than previous years. Yes, very interesting that they are all new fellows. Just like what Maria mentioned, that I turned some of the pieces into a very decorative pieces with, you know, I sold more than bigger size of this, more than 30 during the fairs, which I barely saw one within a year in the earlier time. They are all new guys. They are all new friends. Of course, I love the term revenge style in shopping, but yeah, it's a kind of like that. But people were bored to death under COVID-19 pandemic, so they want to do something. So they want to collect, not because of the investment. They want to enjoy it, just like Maria said, enjoying Chinese painting with designer furniture. Scholar walks on a very maybe fancy or minimal table. So this is how young buyers, collectors act at the moment, because they absorb enough information, they think enough information from the internet, but they've never been to the museum. They've never been to auction houses. When they go to the Hollywood Road, probably they will go to just PMQ as to have a decent dinner, fine dining, and that's it. They miss us. So if we come together and presenting proper education to them, I think the local antique market will remain relatively stronger for a long time. Yeah, of course, I still hope I can solve something I'm going to share, okay, on this. When I was first in the New York Fair, a very important pair of main chairs, but it's not realistic by now. We have to, redo the education again to the people. So yes, it's a term called cost collecting, which is kind of trendy by now. Cost is an extension of cross culture, not just West meets East or East meets West. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Well, I see that we have some questions from the Q&A, and so I would like to relay some of those questions here. Collectors used to learn from and build collections in close collaborations with dealers. Now it seems that many buyers prefer to buy at auction. Can Andy and Maria explain why that has happened and tell us how they see the future for antique dealers?
Andy?
Maria, maybe.
Me? Okay.
Yeah. Sure. Maybe we have different ideas. Yes.
Yeah. Well, we'll both get to it. Sure. Okay, I'm sorry. I'm just going to read this again.
That's young collectors.
Okay.
All right.
Now, I suppose nowadays a lot of entryway for people is through auction. It markets to a lot broader of an audience, and they have a lot more marketing ability than we as private dealers do. They may have started from the antique from the auction side, but I think I do see a lot of people they end up meeting people during the auctions and then they cultivate relationships that way, and then I do like I can only really say for myself, I do meet people that way, and that's how I end up collaborating with a lot of them. And so we as dealers, technically we are in competition with the auction houses, but at the end of the day, we will all work together. And we for the auction houses, a lot of them, for example, Sotheby's, they do this cross-marketing, cross-collecting thing with their curiosity sales, bringing in Western painting, Chinese objects, Western antiquities, and dealers like Axel Vervoort, who does antiquities with contemporary art and design. There is a more of a trend starting with that, and because of that, there's more dialogue, and people and when people meet others during auctions, and they do a lot of referrals, and eventually people do come to us.
So I guess one way to sum up what Maria has just said is that it seems that auctions also happen to be the gathering place for some of these collectors who are starting out where they get the feedback from experts, not just the auctioneers, but also the dealers who are present in those auctions. And then later on, when they have developed these personal relationships, they would go to the galleries of the dealers. And Andy, do you have anything to add to that as to why people may seem to prefer to buy from auctions as opposed to from the galleries? Is that true actually for you?
Yeah, the situation of the let's say the younger buyers more prefer to buy in auction. It's like we love of my father's path. When 1973 Sotheby's first came to Hong Kong with their auctions, my father decided to concentrate into Chinese furniture instead of everything, because he realized that he's competing with, different expert in different fields. So, but it was lack of furniture expert by then. So he decided to concentrate on it, which is a very wise that he did, and this has a great influences on me in concentrate in a specific field. I think we are in the same art world, same antique trade world. Well, of course we do compete each others, but they have their benefit or advantage for us in their extreme marketing that the auction house did. Also brought attention to the private dealer world on some of these younger buyers, especially nowadays under this pandemic time. Everybody stuck at home, they surf everything on the internet. They found us, they found the fair, they came and they buy from us. So it's a reloop again. So I don't really worry about it. I think it's kind of healthy, is you pay and you gain. After you gain, you have to pay back. This is what Bob Elsworth told me. So he donate, he worked with auction houses, with institute. This is what the younger dealers in Hong Kong, like Maria and me, is doing at the moment, or even in the future. Yes.
Thank you. And there is another question online asking, how can we entice the younger generation to appreciate Chinese antiques? Are there educational programs that museums are thinking of organizing? Well, I guess I can take a first crack at that. Yes, museums do think very hard to organize educational programs, and especially during the pandemic, we have moved some of our educational programs from on-site to online. And so for those of you who are interested to check out the museum website at artmuseum.chuhk.edu.hk, you will find that there are a number of educational programs that we put up. And a lot of our programs are also on our Facebook. And previously, we have done a lot of videos of lectures, and some of them are long, some of them are short, depending on your interest. So I think that would provide a very good, solid starting point for those novice collectors. And Libby, please turn to you.
Yeah, sure. For the questions about how the young generation to appreciate Chinese antiques, and indeed we share the same situation, whether dealers or like auction houses or museums. And I think that's most important thing is how to make the so-called antique relevant for today. So it's not something that is past, is always not related, but for today we still could really let the audience or the young generation think that is the past is for the present and the future, and that you could appreciate how to appreciate. So talking about the appreciation of the antique, that would have engaged the educational aspect, as well as how to make it more engaging. So take some example about the trade antiquities that we have in the permanent galleries. And we always ask them, so if you go to travel, ask our visitors or young kids, if you go to travel, would you buy a souvenir back home? Yeah, or something, this is before the photography, there's so many portrait painting of a seaport and any reasons. So that's kind of think what they're doing today. They would do selfie, they would do snapshot or use Instagram. So that's how to relate to their lives. Then they can have a dialogue with the antiquities, and that is the way that to engage young generations, that tell them is related to you. This is part of your life, and then you can create your own stories on that objects. And yes, what Josh mentioned, all the museums nowadays that we work even harder during the pandemic, or everything's online. But I think yes, just like what Andy say, is indeed pandemic could provide the room to have a new phrase that people can still interact in a new way, and which is indeed healthy, even though we would work harder on that. But that would create a new format, or like make a new norm for all of us to engage like through internet, and that indeed would cut all the time differences. Even in other countries, different time zone, we still can work together as well. So that will be something we try our best to do to promote and organize like this.
Another question for online. For an inexperienced collector like me, where and how do you suggest I start? I think a quick answer to that question is for you to see as much as possible. Take advantage of the artworks that are available for you to see in exhibitions and in art fairs. Definitely go to the auction house previews and go to the art fairs, and go to as many museum exhibitions as you can. Without first-hand experience in looking at those objects, it would be very difficult for anyone to talk of buying. But then, of course, while you are in those venues, make friends with dealers and scholars and auctioneers, and ask for their advice. Because we are almost running out of time, and there are a few more questions, so I'll try to get to some other questions too. There is another question on, with the rise of contemporary art outselling the antiques, what is the way we can still make the antiques relevant and attractive? I think this question presumes that the contemporary art market is in competition with the antiques market, but I don't think that is indeed the case. It seems like the pie may be getting bigger. So so whether there are more people interested in contemporary art, it does not necessarily have to come at the expense of antiques. And oftentimes as Maria has pointed out earlier, we find that people who have started out as contemporary art collectors have turned their attention to antique art and classical art. So it's this theme of cross collecting has already come up, and it seems that may indeed be the trend in the future. And there's a question for Maria. If the privilege of going to a one-stop art fair has affected the way we buy and appreciate art, what do you suggest may be an alternative?
Well, have you heard of online viewing rooms?
Okay.
Well, a lot of people, we can't go anywhere, right? We can't travel. And as Josh and Libby have said, people have tried in all institutions, dealers, auction houses, they try to amp up their online presence. And yes, in order for you to, if you don't know where to start, like traditionally, let's say you go to the British Museum and then you walk around and then you see all sorts of different civilizations. You know nothing about the certain civilization, and then you just walk by that department really quickly. But if you have somebody to help you along, to walk you through it, then maybe the next time you go there, you would pay more attention. I think we have all tried quite hard to tap into like the online audience. It's vast, it's wide. People have a lot more time on their hands. As Josh said, traditionally you do go to all the auction houses and the museums and just see as much as possible. But this is what we can do in the meantime. And if you go on to, let's say, a dealer's website, I'm sure that people would be willing to answer certain questions for you. I think, and like, I think we're all pretty open to educating whoever's interested. We're not that closed-minded about things, and especially for the antique field, a lot. We're just grateful for anybody who's listening and who's interested. So we're more than happy to share our knowledge. But as a person who appreciates art, or the avenues to appreciate art, and to also how you start collecting, just go online, just see what speaks to you, and then you kind of go from there. And as I said, a lot more online presence for anything that you're interested in now. So if you try a little bit harder, I'm sure other people have tried as well.
And do come to the museum. My museum is
go
open
to
and it's for
museum?
free.
Go to museum. Yes.
And Libby, is your museum open?
Yeah, it's open. So very welcome.
So do go to the Maritime Museum as well.
Yeah, and then also in what June 2022, there's the Palace Museum in Hong Kong.
Yes.
Is opening as well. That's going to be another avenue. I have no affiliation to it. I'm not doing this as a like a little plug or anything. It's just somebody who's just generally excited that just another avenue will be introduced in the field of historical art. And I did meet with somebody who was working there, and she was discussing with me and how it's not just going to be on Chinese art pieces from the Palace Museum. They're trying to also incorporate other like things from other cultures, trying to put a museum. The Palace Museum is often seen as very old-fashioned, but they're trying to bring this into a newer generation, targeting also the younger audience. They have like exhibitions, including from things from the Louvre, for example, and like trying to bring museums and historical art appreciation to a newer generation and a new century.
Yes, we all eagerly await the opening of the Hong Kong Palace Museum. And in the meantime, the Hong Kong Museum of Art has also reopened last weekend. So
with the Min Cho.
With Min Cho.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Yesterday.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
And please go. Yes, please go to the museum. Yeah.
That way you can also, well, if anybody who doesn't know about everybody saying it's the Min Cho Society is a society in Hong Kong who collect private collectors who have collected antiques, and this is an exhibition with some of the pieces in their private collections, and it's very exciting. And then for those who are interested and seeing maybe from the eye of a collector, I think it's a very important exhibition to go to if you happen to be in Hong Kong.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the final question that I see from our online audience, I think it concerns all of us here, is Andy, do you think that you will be able to hold your art fair this year?
Okay. We make it last year, so we have more confidence this year that, and actually we are still organized as usual, which is in the coming October. Please mark it down. And I want to make a statement before we close the section about the when people think that there's a conflict between collecting contemporary art, modern and ancient art, it's obvious anyway. And but collecting, buying, or appreciating ancient art is you are appreciating something or collecting something which has already proved themselves with their historical and money value. Of course, contemporary art collecting will be a new adventure, which I'm also doing at the moment. So please, no matter it's ancient, modern, and contemporary, please concern our cultural and art environment in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Okay, I think that would be a very good note for us to end this session. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you to all of our panelists. Have a good day, everyone.
Josh, thank you, Maria. Thank you, Libby.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.